Hello everyone. This week's session is about malwares and cyber attacks. Industry sectors like banking and government finance were more concerned about malware attacks compared to the rest of the industry, but the landscape of the attacks has actually changed over time. And data now is the main target. The most valuable asset is actually data today. And any organization that stores information about the public is held responsible for misuse or loss of data. So it's important for organizations to secure their information and make the necessary investment for cybersecurity of their networks. And malware is kind of a weapon for cyber criminals, which are used by malicious entities to execute sinister motives. And in technical term, malware is a combination of the intention of attacking to a system or target with software. And in technical terms, malware is a malicious software, a piece of software whose intentions are indeed malicious. And we hear my computer has a virus. Almost anyone has been involved with any kind of computing device has either said or heard this phrase, right? And these days, we frequently hear about virus attacks, and some of these attacks impact millions of users across the globe. And as security professionals, we explain that the term virus is not an accurate term. It's the correct scientific terminology is malware. A virus is just a category of malware. So malware is a term used to encapsulate the range of programs used to perform attacks against computer systems. And malicious software are computer programs that can be used for varying purposes. And malware utilizes exploits. Remember the exploit from the previous session that leverage vulnerabilities, weaknesses in a system or an operating system to start the process of intrusion into systems. So once the execution of the exploit is achieved, the payload is activated and the attack is indeed performed. So why the criminals use malware? So malware is actually designed commonly for the following reasons. Malwares log keystroke by the user and delete or corrupt files, as well as access private files and delete system calls and create backdoors in the infected system, in which the backdoors help the attacker to access to the system again and again. And we're experiencing or seeing new attack surfaces. New competing platforms like the cloud and IoT have given malware new attack surfaces. While the attack surface and complexity has increased, the defense remains largely unmanned. Unfortunately, there isn't enough of people employed in this sector to deal with the malware analysis. And malware analysis is a complex matter of cybersecurity and computer forensics in which the specialist or professionals takes time and follow a rigorous pathway to become a malware analyst and then analyze varying newly established malwares. And as malware analysts not only come across malware samples that they need to investigate, but they also need to read through analysis reports blogs, and technical articles on the internet and other sources that discuss malware and cyber attacks around the world. And there are various malwares that I'm sure many of you have heard of them, and viruses, worms, trojans, and blended threats. And virus is typically the first kind of malware that's known to self-replicate, and virus is indeed probably the most well-known malware in the community in the user's world. And a virus typically attaches itself to a program, file, or the boot sector of the hard drive. Once the virus attaches itself to that file or a program, then the program is infected or the file is infected, and it continues to self-replicate uh, and spread by attaching replicas of itself to other files and applications in the system. Virus is also called a file infector because it infects the file, and viruses survive by infecting and inserting themselves into healthy files on the system. So they insert themselves in a legitimate file and proliferate from that file. And when a virus is executed, these viruses or virus infects the healthy programs which can run, execute, and display the intended functionality by the computer virus. And viruses are a set of non-autonomous routines capable of modifying programs. So keep in mind that they have the ability to make changes or make modifications on the program or the system so they can contain executable copies of themselves. So a virus must be attached to a host to be spread, okay? And they spread through varying methods, booting a PC through an infected medium. So you're booting your computer and using a flash drive, you might be infecting your computer to boot your system. And executing an infected program and also opening an infected file is also one of the reasons why in which actually viruses can integrate itself with a host file on your system. And a virus indeed lays dormant in your system until you execute or take some other required action, such as enabling macros on an infected doc file. So when you enable a macro type of virus may infect your computer. So it doesn't really have to do with the running an executable file. So once the virus activated, the virus inserts its code into other programs on your device and help copy itself, corrupt your files, and damage device performance. So if you have an issue with your computer and the performance of the computer is getting slower, then there might be a computer virus on your system, and this is indeed a strong indication. And viruses can spread to additional devices, and viruses incorporated new exploitation techniques in tandem with the evaluation of technology. So there are lots of and various types of viruses, and there are macro viruses, we talked about it, and polymorphic viruses are becoming increasingly problematic, and polygraphic viruses use as sort of an engine that change the code of the virus each time it propagates. So whenever the virus propagates itself and spread to another file or system, it changes its code. So it makes it difficult to identify the virus for antivirus program. So antivirus programs looks into the newly, such as newly downloaded programs, or the program to be downloaded, checks the file's ID or identity to see what kind of a signature that program has, and if the signature is identified as a legitimate signature, then the antivirus program lets you download the software or application. But in a case that's a computer virus and its signature is known as an illegal or not legit software, then the virus system just lets you know that it's quarantined and it's actually removed from the system. So the viruses can spread through the infected files shared through the internet, and the Melissa virus was an example of a virus which infects other computers through the infected files shared through the internet. A worm is similar to virus in terms of its propagation, but there's still some differences between a worm and actually virus. Malware, it's a malware or malware functionality that spreads and infects other computers, like viruses, either via the network or some physical means like the USB. Worms are replicating malware that do not need to attach themselves to host to be transmitted or replicated. So in the case of a worm, actually it doesn't need to infect a host file to propagate. It propagates independently, okay? And worms usually take up lots of memory space and network resources. So if there's a problem in your network, and for instance you're trying to reach to other computers, share files, but you feel like the communication or the internet data speed is slower than you would expect or you used to, then there might be an this might be an indication that a worm is transmitting in your network, and all the computers in your network might have a significant problem in communication and transferring the internet packages. So the first worm was the Morris worm, and it was created by Robert Morris in 1988 and designed to measure the size of the internet, but errors in the code led to spread out of the virus, and it just went out of control and led to the indeed creation of the first computer emergency response team to deal with these kind of viruses. And another example that we can talk about, the code red worm. It spread rapidly around the world and caused a DOS attack due to its instant replication and spreading attempts. If you want to take a look at what was the DOS attack, just look at the previous session slides. And the difference between the virus and worm is that viruses and worms both cause damage and indeed copy themselves rapidly. But the main difference is that viruses requiring the help of a host computer and its files, and worms acting independently. So worms can propagate in a network independently and without needing attaching itself in a file. And backdoor is an unauthorized entry point by which an attacker can enter the victim's system. Okay, so remember the confidentiality, subjects, confidentiality, integrity, okay, and other subjects related with the computer, uh, security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and authorization. And if there is a violation of authorization, through the back door. This is an authorization attack, an unauthorized entry point by which an attacker can enter the victim's system is related with backdoors. And for example, a malware can create an open network port on the system which has remote command line access that can be accessed by the attacker to gain entry into the system. So to enter into the system, the attacker leaves a backdoor, leaves an open door in the system, and communicates with the system through an access, a shell access or remote command line. You remember you might use CMD command or other types of command lines, but this is a little bit different. You have an opportunity to have an encrypted communication with the target system where the system may not be able to, or the user may not be able to even realize that the information is being transmitted from his computer to another computer or system without his authorization and knowledge. And in this case, a shell access or a remote command line is actually being used. And Trojan is a malware that masquerades as a clean software. So, and it's installed on the victim machine with the user's full knowledge, but the user is not aware of its real malicious intentions. So you're downloading a program and it's supposed to be helpful for your computer or for your other needs, but it turns out that the Trojan is installed in your computer and it uses these backdoors to communicate with the attacker, and the attacker can have full knowledge on your system and can manipulate your system. And this can be very effective if the attacker uses Trojans. And Trojan horses are programs which appear innocuous but contain hidden functions. They do not have automated replication like the worms or viruses, but they must be sent out to others, and they can conceal larger payloads. So this is one of the advantages of the Trojan horses, and they are disguised as something that would be enticing to others. Once downloaded or opened, they execute their payload silently. So without even being aware of the impact of the Trojan horse, you may end up using your most important data. And some of the functions of the Trojan horses are keystroke logging, and webcam control, access to stored information, and function as backdoors for attackers to continuously enter your machine. And secondary infection venues are actually opened by the Trojan horse as well. Trojans have been actually there have been several Trojans known as important and remembered as the as part of the malware history. The sub 7, which was highly popular tool written by Mapman was actually used by several people, and even kids were using Sub 7 and were trying to access to other computers and manipulate data and send unwanted messages to the computer or steal information. So it was a very effective computer program, and it acted as a remote administration program. And Zeus was popular Trojan for password collection, remote control, and key logging, and it's another Trojan that has been very influential. And the botnet malware is a blended threat combining multiple elements of existing malware together. They infect multiple machines via common vulnerabilities. So they search for vulnerabilities in a given system, and similar to worms or viruses, in that they infect other machines, but they deliver a payload like a Trojan. So they have some similarity with Trojans, and multiple machines infected by the same bot are called a botnet. So a botnet is created by having multiple botnets in its network of infected system. It was usually controlled via IRC or HTML, and now affecting IoT devices and other new types of devices. And botnet operators can use their infected systems to engage in various types of attacks, and botnets have been effectively used by hacktivists, who are the ones who hack in computers or systems or attack through computers, but they usually have a political agenda than just earning money. And botnets also are becoming larger, or botnets spread through distribution of spam. So spam messages can be very effective in the distribution of botnets. And exploit packs are a unique form of malware that are installed on the web servers, and sometimes they're called drive-by downloads, as the user doesn't actually interact with the malware to activate its payload. Individuals who visit a website hosted on the infected server will have their browser silently attacked. So you don't even know, or you don't even expect that the website would be attacking to your computer. And then the pack exploits common vulnerabilities in the web browsers of the user and runs exploits against the web browser and until it's infected. So you might end up having a computer virus just by clicking a website, and it may actually cause a lot of problem. You may even lose your financial data from your computer. So keep in mind that we need to access to websites that are actually digitally certified and also trusted websites. And keep in mind that the website that you browse have or has no spelling mistake and other types of mistake in the browser's search bar. And ransomware is a novel form of malware that infects a system through downloadable files or websites. So CryptoLocker is a key example of ransomware. We have actually talked a bit about ransomware in the past classes, such as the Colonial Pipeline attack. Once activated, the payload of the malware may encrypt the user files or modify the boot record in order to restrict user access. Victims must then pay the attacker or risk losing access to data. So if you already backed up everything in your system, then you may not really want to pay for it. But in larger systems, in large networks or large company networks, uh, time and money is equally important, and in a shorter amount of time you need to recover your system and rerun everything. But as in the colonial pipeline attack, what we've seen is that there weren't enough time, and the CEO of the company had to actually pay for the ransomware. So it might be a challenge even if you don't want to make a payment. The impact of malware can be very huge. There are new malware variants identified every day, and 84 million variations in 2015, with an average of 230,000 per day. So that's a very large impact. And if we look at the recent number, we will probably see a lot larger, much larger variations in these days. And it's truly a global problem with infections identified in most industrialized nations. So worms can be very detrimental, and the new type of malwares have more advanced features. And in these days, it's very hard to see and understand a malware from just file signature. You need to deal with a lot of advanced feature of the malware. And unfortunately, the use of antivirus protection doesn't eliminate the risk of harm. So keep in mind that you just need to be a user who has actually a self-awareness of these facts, and try not to browse websites that you have never browsed, and make sure the websites has a secure communication, and also the website's address needs to be checked before actually accessing the website through various other methods, which we will see in the next classes. And malware writers and hackers have similar methods and motives. They do not consider their actions to be wrong, first of all. Tools wouldn't work if there were fewer exploits out there, and they may seek attention, and they have a desire to damage or disrupt the systems, and they simply make money. For many of them, they simply try to make money or some earn for their living. And there are a range of websites, forums, and IRC channels devoted to malicious computer activity. Malware, carding, and stolen data are amongst these malicious activities. And these sites can provide hackers with direct access to malware and services that enable individuals to engage in cyber attacks. And these websites actually facilitate attacks by skilled and unskilled attackers alike. And malware has become a crimeware. So a person who wants to use malware to a targeted system can purchase the malware and attack to another system in return of more financial gain. And there are also some social forces in cybercrime markets. So there are three normative orders shaped relationships and actions in these cybercrime markets. The first one is price, customer service, and obviously trust. Without a trust between them, it's very hard to communicate between the criminals. There should be at least some trust between the criminals. And also, like other markets, and the prices and customer service is obviously are obviously important, because even if in illicit drug trafficking, the prices, customer service, and trust are the three pillars that affect the crime markets or illegal drug trafficking. And here you can see some examples about the price of a given tool or service. And you see you have probably written similar things for yourself. True for myself is a laughable price. And here we see another communication here. 2K that just for the bot. 2K and for bypass of fires and full invisibility, and 2K that's just for the bot. And again, it continues that the discussion about the price is a big problem, or it's an important matter for all businessmen, and they are running like businessmen. They are running their business like a businessman. Okay. And the customer service is also important. It's actually quite a bit of customer service. There are a number of measures used by sellers in order to draw in customers. Customers expect sellers to answer questions quickly. Some sellers give free gifts to entice buyers, and many also offer dedicated customer service lines to support and respond to customer questions. Okay, so it's not quite different from the legitimate business. Sellers who respond quickly receive positive feedback and get a bigger portion of the market. Okay, so that's another similarity between a legitimate market and illegal market. So when it comes to gain money or financial gain, there's not much of a big difference in terms of the cybercrime markets. And the next thing was, remember, trust. Since these exchanges take place electronically, the participants need to trust one another. Yeah, they don't even know each other, in fact. Firms utilize checks to ensure that products are accurate, and others offer guarantee services to ensure successful transactions are completed. So there's a checks and balance here. And positive feedback helps individuals to know who to trust in the market. So feedbacks play a significant role, like the Amazon. You look at the reviews on the Amazon, and you decide to purchase or not. If there's 2 stars or 1 stars, you are unlikely to buy that product from whatever the market is. So the trust relationship is based on some form of checks to ensure that the products are accurate, and others offer guarantee services to ensure successful transaction, and then the feedbacks. Laws dealing with malware is very versatile, and there are many laws related with dealing with malware, and CFA also makes it illegal to knowingly sell, buy, or trade passwords or other information used to access computer with the intent to defraud victims. And what CFA means is that Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and it makes illegal to sell or trade passwords or other types of information used to access computer with the malicious intent or for defrauding victims. So the computers harm must be either involved in interstate or foreign commerce or operated by or for the federal government. Okay. And the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act also makes it illegal to extort funds from individuals on the basis of threats to use or cause damage to a protected computer, threats to obtain information or affect confidentiality of information. Remember the confidentiality section from the previous presentation without authorization or access, and damage to a computer when caused to enable extortion is also in the radar of CFA, and it's a criminal act. There are 29 states in the US have made it illegal to create or distribute computer contaminants. And less specific than malware, recognizing the capacity of computer code to damage, destroy, or transmit information without the permission of the system or owner is a crime. And 25 states also criminalize DOS or DDoS attacks. And 2 states recognize ransomware as well. So there are state laws associated with the malware and computer contaminants. And the UK Computer Misuse Act has been used for malware-related offenses, and the Police and Justice Act 2006 extended the act to address 3 offenses: making, adapting, supplying, or offering to supply any article intending it to be used to commit or to assist in the commission of an offense under the Computer Misuse Act is a criminal act, and supplying or offering to supply any article believing that it's likely to be used in the commission of offenses under the Computer Misuse Act is another way of dealing with malware in the UK, and obtaining any article with a view to its being supplied for use to commit or assist in the commission of offenses under the Computer Misuse Act is also another criminal act in the UK. And antivirus vendors have one of the most prominent and global roles in malware mitigation. Without them, it wouldn't be possible to deal with malware. And major vendors provide their products to the general public and collect information on new threats, and antivirus tools work through signature-based identification, and each piece of malware is given a signature or definition to identify it within a user system. So the signatures of the files help antivirus programs to identify these types of illegal softwares, and the signature is the identifier, is the ID card of the program. But we remember that we talk about the advanced methods malwares have been using within the last decade to get around from such antivirus programs. And malware's modus operandi is just like any other software. Malware is no different from a regular software when it comes to targeting its victims. They want to make sure they can run on as many end user devices as possible without any hiccups. So they want to spread, and malware authors always like to make sure their malware can impact a larger mass or community for a better return or investment. That's how they can sell their product. That's how they can impact the community and get a reputation around the globe. And the targets of malware can vary. And to make sure this happens, they write malware targeting various operating systems: Windows, macOS, Linux, and Android. Various operating systems are under the attack of malwares. And the target devices for malware have also expanded from desktops and laptops to servers, cell phones, SCADA devices, remembered SCADAs from the previous class, and IoT devices. So malwares can attack any type of digital device where the device can interpret the code injected in the system. And here you see a, a figure here that shows the malware's components. So malwares have the payload in the center and a packer, and malwares have various features, okay, from persistence to armoring and self-defense of themselves, and propagation and spreading, communication, and they can also stay hidden and stay in a stealth mode. The payload is important and most important, and the mandatory component of malware. Keep in mind that the term payload is used to describe what a virus, worm, or Trojan is designed to do on a victim's computer. So it's the main function of the payload and of the attack, indeed. A malware infection happens with the aid of multiple binaries, okay? A binary file is a file whose content must be interpreted by a program, and they are non-text files, okay? And a malware infection happens with the aid of multiple binaries, either executable or non-executable, that are used in a sequence of combination to fully achieve the goal of its attacker. So malware uses binaries to attack, whether it's executable or non-executable file, and used in a combination to fully achieve its goal. So malwares can be very complicated and very advanced, and the payload is the major and mandatory component of the malware that purports the function. And each of these individual binaries in this chain of binaries can be described as payload. So there might be a lot of binary in the system of the malware, and they can be doing different, or they can vary in terms of their functions, but when we all get together, all of them, they are called as payload. And examples of payloads are password stealers. They steal passwords from browsers, FTP clients, and the victim's other login credentials. And banking malware are developed to steal banking credentials. And ransomware encrypts victims' sensitive data. We have heard of a lot of news about the ransomwares in the last few years, and the ransomware extorts ransom from the victim to free these resources back to the victim. So basically, ransomware encrypts your own information and asks for or request money from you, like $200 or $300, depending on the value of the victim, and it might be $4 million or $5 million if it's an institution or organization key to the infrastructure of the United States. obviously the ransomware chains. And adversaries display unwanted advertisements to victims. So you download an adware, then it turns out that you to see things that you never want to see as an adware. And there's another example of payload. It's point of sale malware. It steals credit card information from systems linked to POS devices. So this can be very harmful to the finance of individuals using POS devices. And the next item is Packer. Packer is an other layer around the payload that compresses and obfuscates it. So it compresses and obfuscates the payload. So what happens if a payload is compressed and obfuscated? A packer can be used by both clean software and malware, and the usual goal of a packer is to compress the software, but the indirect effect of the compression is obfuscation, because of which static analysis and static signatures from the antivirus fail to detect packed malware. And since the inner payload is no longer visible, it's no longer easy to detect the malware. So packer is basically packs the payload, and when it's packed and compressed, then the antivirus will fail to detect the packed malware. Like a usual package, if there's a package, you don't see inside it, and it's not easy to open that package when it's locked with different algorithms. And the next important thing is persistence. Any malware aims to run more than just once a victim's machine, and wants to always run and stay in the system and sustain reboots and multiple logins. So a malware wants to be persistent and uh, keep keep it up what it has been doing. So that's an important message given by the malware, that it says that I am persistent, I'm gonna keep up doing what I have been doing, I'm gonna continue working even if you reboot your computer. Okay, and the techniques with which malware survives reboot is called persistence. And banking malware aims to steal banking credentials and wants to make sure that it's up and running, and always so that it can steal the credentials from the browser whenever a user opens the browser and logs into their banking websites. And remote access Trojan is a very effective Trojan, and uh, these Trojans monitors a victim's activities and uploads user logs and uses the systems. And ransomware may not only want to encrypt existing files on the system, but also new files are created by the user after reboot. So depending on the type of malware, we might see different ways of persistence by different malwares. And the next component of the malware is actually communication. Most malware wants to communicate with the attacker. The reason could be anything from uploading stolen data to receiving commands from the attacker. And malware talks to the attacker through command and control servers. Okay, and the CNC communication was indeed simple a decade ago, but consisting of IRC chat or simple HTTP communication was easier for malwares to communicate from the target computer to their system. But with the advancements in network detection products like IDS, IPS, and next generation firewalls, interception of malware communication became easy, and this led malware to resort to more complex communication methods like using HTTPS, DNS tunneling, domain generation algorithms, and Tor, and so forth. There are a lot of opportunities that gives an encrypted communication for malware to transmit its data. Okay, and so we'll talk about more in the future classes. And propagation, we talked about propagation when we were talking about the virus and worms. And malware wants to spread to as many as devices as possible, not just to get a higher victim footprint or profile. And advanced persistent threats may try to find the real target located somewhere in the network. So advanced persistent threat attack is a type of attack that's planned in an advanced manner, and it takes for months to develop an advanced persistent threat attack. And in an APT attack, the attacker may not be able to find the real target, but using auto-run worms and which use USB flash drives to spread from one machine to another, then there might be a chance to find the real target. Okay. The other example is the WannaCry malware. It's an infamous malware used for Eternal Blue exploit to propagate through the network and infect other machines. So you might end up being victimized even if the target server is completely secure, but if the other computers within the network are not secure enough or security problems, then these computers may lead the attacker find the real target. And it takes a lot of time for APT attackers to attack to a system. And the next component is armoring. Malware doesn't want to be detected by anti-malware products. That's normal, and doesn't want malware analysis to analyze it. And armoring is used by malware to protect themselves from both detection and analysis. So there are many opportunities or advanced skills in a malware where they utilize anti-debugging, antivirus, VM detection, and sandbox detection and analysis tools detecting are among the various armoring techniques employed by malware. So malwares can be very advanced, and it's not quite different from a Matrix movie. There's a constant war between the two sides. There's a logical war between the cybersecurity analysts and hackers. And when malware does detect that it's inside an analysis environment, the malware might exhibit benign behavior to fool the analysis. So this is an other behavior that the malwares have been using. And the next component is that malwares are stealth, and malware needs to hide on the system so that the user doesn't detect its presence in plain sight. It's equally important for malware to hide from anti-malware software. So they need to be stealth, they need to hide themselves. And stealth is a high priority for banking Trojans and rats and other types of malware. And thank you very much, guys, for listening to this session until the end of it. If you have any question, just email me and communicate, or if you need more resources to grasp your knowledge more, please feel free to communicate with me. And thank you very much, you all, and have a nice weekend. Thank you.